What? We need our rabbi. Rob? Rob? You want to just have one copy up there and... No, I gotta do one more thing and I'm be happy.
you want me? I don't care. You want to start? Really? Because I hear you a lot. I hear you a lot. Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our annual meeting. I'm going to kick it off. So thanks for attending. Got a super large audience, as always. Thank you. And all right, so if you haven't picked up an agenda, they're sitting in the back over here. Feel free to pick one up. Our goal is to kind of cover everything within about an hour's time frame. And we will start with Rabbi Rubin giving us a devar and some opening remarks.
All right, thank you, Robert. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Nice to see you all. I feel like I want to say Shabbat Shalom, but that would not be right. So I want to, of course, welcome you all to this annual meeting and start with some words of Torah. Our parashah, it's, I think, the hardest parashah in the whole Torah to say. Bahalotecha. It's a tricky one. Bahalotecha contains within it perhaps the most important turning point in the entire Torah. The two previous parshiot describe, I'm going to take this off just for this, describe the preparations for the journey to the land of Israel in great detail. The atmosphere is optimistic. The camp is organized precisely around the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Every tribe has its place and has its degel, its flag. No need to worry about directions. The camp is surrounded and protected by God's protective cloud, and the pillars of cloud and fire will guide them. Trumpets are sounded, and here is how it's described in the Torah. It's the end of chapter 10. So they set out from the mountain of the Lord and traveled for 3 days. The ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them during those 3 days to find them a place to rest. The cloud of the Lord was over them by day when they set out from the camp. Whenever the ark set out, Moshe said, and you know this, Kuma Adonai ve'afutzu oiveka. Rise up, Lord, may your enemies be scattered, may your foes flee before you. And this is how the 10th chapter of Numbers ends, of Bamidbar ends. The very next verses, the beginning of chapter 11, read as follows. So we just started. It's exciting. It's optimistic. Trumpets, joy. Now, when the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes, the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. The rabble among them had a strong craving, and the Israelites also wept again and said, "If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at." Cucumbers and garlic? Seriously? They've witnessed the splitting of the sea, experienced the revelation of God and the Aseret HaDibrot at Sinai, as well as the construction and dedication of the Mishkan. They've been provided food from heaven. And after all this, they're upset because they miss cucumbers and garlic. This is the turning point. We went from an ecstatic departure on the journey to the land to bitter complaints about food, and we'll soon encounter in the coming weeks the incident of the spies, a punishment of 40 years in the desert, the rebellion of Korach, the false prophecy of Bilam, and sexual and religious transgression and idolatry, in response to which is the dangerous zealotry of Pinchas. No sooner do the people start marching toward Eretz Yisrael than it all goes downhill. So terrible is this reversal that it essentially causes Moshe to have a nervous breakdown later on in chapter 11. So what can we learn tonight from this passage in our parashah? So I see 2 lessons for our kihila. First, and very simply, transitions are hard. It's one thing to prepare for the journey, quite another to embark on the journey. Beth Jacob is also in the midst of a number of transitions. We're entering a semi-pseudo, sort of post-COVID world. There's a new president, a new executive director, a semi-new rabbi following a predecessor who served the community for well over 30 years. It's a lot, and I think we owe it to ourselves to admit how difficult that can be. Second, it's important for all of us to keep our heads and try to discern the difference between what I'll call real tsuris, right, troubles, problems, that is real reasons to worry, and just the regular tsuris of shul life, the things this community has been contending with for most, if not all, of its history. In the story, the shift into complaint mode at the beginning of the 11th chapter begins with the words, Vayehi ha'am ke mitonanim, which is usually translated as the people took to complaining. But it actually means that the people were like complainers. Ke mitonanim. They were like complainers. In his commentary, Ramban, Nachmanides, understands this to mean that Bnei Israel started complaining as if they were suffering greatly, despite the fact that God had provided for all their needs. Hence, they were ke mitonanim, acting as if they were suffering when they really weren't. So yes, we have challenges, Beth Jacob, and our share of tsuris, but we also have so many things to be grateful for. I'm confident that we'll be able to know the difference between when we should really worry and when, like tonight, we should put our shoulders to the grindstone and go to work, ensuring that this remarkable kihila not only remains a source of Torah, Kedusha, and Chaverut, communal care and solidarity, but flourishes and grows in the future as such a source. So have a good meeting, and delighted to hear what happens in the next hour, roughly? Something like that. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Rob and I wanted to share some thoughts on some lessons that we've picked up over the past couple years and give our gift to a read in the community of what we think is a little bit of some wisdom. As you're all aware, we faced many significant challenges over the course of these past 2 years. There's a worldwide pandemic, major rabbinic and staff transitions, racial awakenings, unrest in Israel, and rising anti-Semitism at home. Yet through it all, the Beth Jacob community continued to support each other and not only survive, but thrive. The past 2 years have taught us many things, some relatively straightforward and some quite difficult and emotional. In our final address to this congregation, we think it's important to highlight 2 of the lessons we learned in the hopes that we may embed them in the future of this congregation. The first lesson involves the importance of celebrating our differences and learning to live in a community where disagreements occur. The Beth Jacob Kehillah was founded in the spirit of pluralism, and over the years, we've taken pride in the diversity that exists within our community. We have lifelong Minnesotans and transplants, urban dwellers and suburban and rural residents, same-sex couples and heterosexual partners, able-bodied congregants and those with disabilities, supporters of the government in Israel and those more critical of the politics there. However, we've always been able to focus on those aspects which we have in common and which bring us together on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis. Yet, more than ever, these past 2 years have brought challenges that have demanded that we engage in difficult conversations in which our differences have come to the forefront. Mirroring the trends that have afflicted our United States of America, at times it has seemed like we have become a divided community. Congregants have aligned themselves as either supporters or detractors of the Black Lives Matter movement, in favor of adding ever more security to protect us and support, or those who support maintaining the Hamisha nature of our gatherings. There have been believers in the obligation to close down our physical spaces and protect the health of all congregants, and others who advocated for the importance of continuing to come together in person and minimize our social isolation. Some of us are strongly aligned with the belief that Israel has every right to defend itself, and it is not our place to criticize the government, and others of us are extremely conscious of the rights and hardships of the Palestinian people and other residents of the Holy Land. Looking back, we wish that we had been better able to guide our kahila to put aside the emotions that come with these discussions and engage in constructive dialogue while respecting the opinions of our fellow congregants. Sadly, it rarely felt like we could rise above the tendency to focus on the differences versus approaching these discussions from a place of shared value and traditions. There was little forward movement in these conversations, and while total agreement is an unreachable ideal, respecting the opinions of others and coming with an open mind is necessary for us to move forward. Tough talks will continue to be necessary, and we hope to be able to use them as a healing point for our kahila, not as something to divide us. Similarly, we would have liked to help more of our congregants approach shul life with a glass is half full mentality. During COVID, more often than not, expectations of staff and lay leaders grew in step with the immeasurable obstacles that were placed in their way. While positive feedback was occasionally received, many congregants focused on events, activities, or actions that they believe warranted criticism. We need to return to a time where our differences were celebrated and the focus was on what gave us joy versus what brought on frustration. We need to acknowledge our strengths and spend less time highlighting areas for improvement. Our clergy, staff, lay leaders, and volunteers all do what they do out of a love for our people and a passion for making the community a better place. So please, take a moment in the coming days and weeks to step back, smell the roses, and embrace all those who make our community so special. Express kind thoughts and suppress your need to criticize or even demonize others. Take the time to better understand those with opinions or deeply held beliefs that might not align with yours. Engage in dialogue that allows for disagreements on specific topics without withdrawing from the community. Remember, we share more in common with each other than we have differences that separate us.
Okay. So that was item number 1. So the second learning we'd like to leave you with is the importance of focusing on the future while still respecting our past. Our collective identity has been shaped by the events of the 1980s and 90s. By now, all of you are probably aware of the narrative of our founding and the challenges of the early years. However, as we move into a new era in the life of the shul, we need to find ways to focus on the future and attract new members. Doing so isn't disrespectful to those who led the congregation through the early years. In fact, the opposite is true. It's continuing the legacy that our bonim, our builders, began. In the past 2 years, we have also seen slow growth in the number of young families looking to join our Beth Jacob family. We need to find ways to attract young kids to the synagogue and entice new members to come, create connections with the Jewish community, whether that's a fun play set or even a simple basketball hoop. Giving a Jewish identity to our children is important for them and our community. We hope that we continue to embrace these new families and their children while still retaining the respect and historical knowledge of our elder community members. The intergenerational connection is imperative to the foundation of this community. I remember when my mom passed away, and I went to morning minyan every day to be able to say Kaddish. My girls were too young to be able to stay home alone, so they came with me almost every single morning. They would go around the chapel holding the tzedakah box, and eventually Marissa would learn to lead the services as well. Even though they may have been too young to understand the connections they were making, there was something truly special to witness. They always collected the most tzedakah of all the box carriers. Every congregant would give them a smile as they walked into the door. That amazing connection lives on today. Every time they read Torah, give a davar, or simply show up to shul, they know that they are in a community that loves and values them from the eldest on down. And that intergenerational connection extends to the older youth in Bijusi. Sometimes we can get so focused on the young kids, ensuring Beth Jacob's future is intact, that we can forget about the teens who are Beth Jacob's present. Our community needs to be connected through all of the generations. We can all learn both from the stories of our elders and the activism of our youth. Those tough conversations that we adults struggle with are topics that affect the daily lives of our kids: guns in schools, anti-Semitic events on college campuses, and racial inequities are all things that are directly related to our kids. They know how to have these hard conversations, and it might be time that we show them how valued they are and take a page out of their notebook on how to approach these challenging topics. We are ecstatic to welcome in the new president of Beth Jacob, Orit Ackerman. Orit has been working with us as the president-elect for a year now, and we know that we are leaving the shul in the best hands possible. She loves the shul like her own family, and it shows in everything that she does. Her dedication and thoughtfulness are going to help lead us into the future that this shul is capable of and quite honestly deserves. As we pass on these lessons learned, along with the presidential torch to Orit, we keep in mind the saying, "L'dor v'dor," from generation to generation. This is the saying that keeps the Jewish community alive. It's the reason we continue to survive through 2,000 years of persecution. We always pass on the torch to those next in line. We imbue in them the importance of the Jewish faith and Jewish community and trust them to take it and make it theirs. Well, Orit, that is what we're doing now. Not only are Neil and I giving you the presidential torch, the whole community is behind us in this transition. With this metaphorical torch, you are inheriting a community full of loving, passionate, sometimes strong-headed, amazing people. We have much in common with each other, but we also have differing thoughts and perspectives on a variety of topics, and that's okay. You already know why the Beth Jacob family is important, and we, all of us, know that you will care for it with all your heart and head. While it's in your possession, you should make it your own. Our congregation is the way it is today because of all the influences of the past that were mixed together as each member made this community their own home. We hope that you take this torch and do the same as those before you and leave your mark on Beth Jacob. And when you are satisfied, we hope that you continue to pass on this torch to each new generation so they can understand what makes this community so special and add their own spice to flame, just as you will in these coming years. L'dor v'dor v'todah rabbah. Thank you.
So before these wonderful men exit the stage, I have gifts of gratitude for the time and energy that you put to this community. As someone who stepped into it, I'm lucky to have had the leadership and expertise over here with you guys to help get me started, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and learn with you as you transition into your next phase of involvement. And may these be a token of ways that you guys can celebrate with your families together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So next up is the finance report by Eric Pasternak. Woo woo.
Well, thank you, Rob, and thank you, Neil, on many levels. They only think they're done. That's right. The X, not next. Yes, the position of past president, both immediate past president and long time ago past president, the past presidents are an integral part of this community and are called upon at many, many times and in many, many ways to help out. So you're not done. You only think you are. But we'll give you a pass for a few months, okay? Okay. Quick financial report. On the back of the program is a summary of the 3 pictures that I showed at the town hall meetings. And I'm not going to try to describe what took 40 minutes in a town hall meeting in 3 minutes. That's not fair to anybody. I can talk fast, though. I'm good at that. The major points on this are expenses are roughly 2/3 salary. That hasn't changed. And our revenues are over half from ASC. That hasn't changed. So that's the summary of the 2 upper plots. That was easy. In terms of where we stand now, and that's not shown in here, we planned this year to have a deficit budget because we thought the last thing that would make sense as we were coming out of the worst of the pandemic would be to shut down our programs. Like, that would be stupid. Might as well just plan on losing your membership. So we decided we would kind of go full speed ahead and planned a deficit budget. It looks like right now the deficit will be somewhat smaller than we thought, but it's still a deficit budget. For next year, we proposed a balanced budget. And the balanced budget is what we hope to continue doing in the future as well. The bottom slide on here is probably the most important, and that is that our ASC is not what it needs to be. An annual sustaining contribution, kind of like NPR has a sustaining contribution, sustaining memberships. The idea of sustaining is that it keeps the organization going. And we end up having to do an awful lot of fundraising in addition to ASC to meet our needs. And we'd like to try to bring up our ASC higher, which gives me basically the right to say to everybody in this room, you're going to get an ASC letter next week or the week after. I'm hoping next week it should go out. And it's going to ask you for a pledge. Please consider going higher than the pledge you're asked for. The bottom slide shows it all. We have roughly 20% of our families who pay no ASC at all, another 20% who pay under $600 a year, and going all the way to the right, we have less than 20% who pay over $3,000 a year, which is the cost of maintaining the synagogue. This is $1 million operation, which is $3,000 a day. Can't get away from that with the size staff we have and the programs that we want to provide. So please, everybody consider moving yourself to the right on that bottommost graph, and it'll make everybody's life easier this year. Thank you. That's all. And I'll give the podium to, is Jake here? Yeah, to Jake Bahar, who's going to, yes, he is here. Good. How could I miss him? And to give the U.S.-wide board report. Yay, Jake.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob Bihar, and I'm going to be the president of Bejewsi for the 2022-2023 school year. Thank you. Thank you. This past year that we had in Bejewsi was extremely successful. We had super strong in-person programming, including weekly lounge nights, volunteer programs, and regional conventions. Some of our highlights included a mystery bus ride, a cupcake lounge, and a puppy lounge. Personally, I ran 2 programs, and that was Chocolate Seder, which we included Kadima on. We had a lot of people show up, even some people from other synagogues. And I also managed USY Shabbat, which was probably my favorite program of the year. We had almost every single Bejewsier show up and participate in USY Shabbat, and I was really happy to see that. We were actually able to have in-person Kadima programming as well. Some of those programs included sledding, mystery bus ride for Kadima, and so much more. We did a lot of volunteer work this year. Some of that work included a high holiday chair setup, LED bulb lounge night, which basically meant we went in and we fixed a lot of the LED bulbs in some of the classrooms down there. We did sukkah setup as one of our first programs of the year. That's one of my favorite as well. I love putting together the sukkah and making it basically Bajusi sukkah every year. We get to decorate it and throw all kinds of beads and strings and whatever we want on it. We were able to have an in-person CMT this year, which went really, really well for the most part. At CMT, we also had our elections for the 2022-2023 school year Bajusi board. So joining me on the board will be Solomon Lahman as the Director of Communications. We will have Libby Ackerman as our membership and Kadima president. She'll oversee our membership, and she will be the leader of Kadima. She'll also be doing our shirt presentations for this year. We'll have Maya Shapiro as our social action Tikkun Olam vice president. She'll be running things like our LED bulb lounge night, our high holiday chair setup. She'll be planning those. We'll have Elijah Golab as our religious/education, taking over my job last year. Sophia Lahman will be rejoining us this year as the same position of Israel Affairs and as Executive Vice President. I, Jacob Bihar, will be the President, and Amalia Fisher will be the President ex officio. Additionally, we are going to have 2 new youth committee chairs, one being my mother, Mary Bihar, and the other being Alana Leavitt. Did I say that right? Alana Leavitt. We will also be having Barry Golab returning as our youth director this year. Some of you may not know, but we had a youth director who started us off in the beginning of the school year, who unfortunately had to leave due to family and medical concerns. He had to take a new position at another synagogue, and Barry was so kind enough to step in and rejoin us as the Bajusi youth director, and he really helped turn our program around for the better. So I'd just like to thank Barry one more time. So thank you, Barry. Additionally, I would like to thank all of you for your continued support for Bajusi and USY. I really look forward to having a great year in Bajusi and Beth Jacob. Thank you.
This is probably the biggest switch down that we'll have in a while. Thank you, Ben. It is my pleasure to introduce this year's Bud Sweet Award winner. And when names of nominees came up and his name was mentioned, it was unanimous that he was an incredibly deserving recipient of the award for his selflessness, his desire to do anything that is needed and called upon, his unassuming manner. He's not somebody who looks for the limelight or looks for any glory. The opposite. He's usually back where you can't see him directing and doing all the hard work. We had a fabulous High Holidays this year, and it was due much in part to the organizing, the scheduling, the absolute focus on every detail. If you can think back to the gentleman with earbud in his ear and a little walkie-talkie walking around, that says a lot on who he is. This year marks the 15th anniversary of his ascendancy to the presidency in 2007. So he is given in many ways over the years. But what Rob and I are most appreciative is Jeff Marshall stepped up when we had a departure of our executive director and I don't think any of us would have survived the service that was brought upon a sudden departure. And he kept our sanity, and he was a fabulous, fabulous bridge to our new executive director, and was just incredibly giving and kind and selfless, and I can't think of a better person for this award. He also becomes part of the first husband-wife team to separately win the Bud Sweet Award. We've had Larry and Sue Savette, and we've had Rabbi Alberg and Louis Newman, but they all shared it. And our love for Jeff and Lori is so large that we felt we needed to give it each separately to them. So thank you, Jeff, as the recipient of this year's Bud Sweet Award. Gift. Come on up.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to say much because Bud wouldn't like that. But I work with Bud. I work with Bud for many years. I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm going to take this off. I worked with Bud for many years. We were initially on the date book, the old date book, and then also on the finance committee. And I tell you, I have so much respect for that man. If we can do an ounce of the kind of work he did, we will be fine. So just keep at it. We'll keep at it, and we'll be good. So that's all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you to Jeff also. And I'll second what Neil said, is if you were not able to jump in as the interim executive director, I'm not sure what we would have done. So thank you again. All right. So as this is our transition to the new fiscal year, we will have a few of our board members exiting us, and I just want to give them recognition. So they are, if you look in the agenda, they're listed there as well. Beth Friend, Gordon Gendler, Mike Keller, and Talia Vital. What I'll say is I'll leave Mike here for a moment, but I just want to give a very hearty, deep, heartfelt thanks to all the work that, everybody has done, but especially for those that are outgoing, where you jumped in again during some very unusual circumstances and helped guide the show to where we are today, and that would be for Beth, Gordon, and Talia. Certainly appreciate all the service that you have given to us, and looking forward to working with you as a volunteer going forward. For Mike, I just want to give him a special thank you. It's been 4 years for you. It was 3 years with Neil, myself, and you as we transitioned and kind of guided through multiple rabbis, obviously the pandemic, several other things. It's been a pleasure for you to be my friend, colleague, co-president, iffy, right? Just guiding the show to where we are today, and really helping us, Neil and I, put us in a good position when we took over from you, and all your support you gave us as past president as well. I don't want that to go by the wayside. I think a lot of times people are president, then they become past president, and just because you're not the face anymore, people think, oh, well, they were president. But there is a lot of work that goes into past president as well, in supporting the new board, new president, and of course, not least or most important, but the nomination of the new slate that comes in. So special thank you. Keep our friendship going. And we didn't kill each other, which is great. And with that being said, I'll welcome Mike up to give us a nomination committee report. Thanks. Thank you.
So this is going to be very quick. Last year, the bylaws of the congregation were changed, and the size of the board was diminished. So we now have 18 members of the board, as opposed to, I think it was 24 before. We didn't actually lose anyone off of the board itself. Beth Friend was a split member of the board, and she was on with Leslie Morris, and Leslie had decided she wanted to stay on, as did Lisa Walker, who is on her second term. The other members were executive, and, well, Talia was an executive committee member, and Gordon was a presidential appointee. So we basically had nothing to do. The only changes this year were Leonard coming back as treasurer, financial vice president. Eric is moving over to a different vice presidency. And Kevin Broder stepped up to take the place of Orit. So that's it. I'd like to thank my committee. They all worked hard. We had exactly 2 meetings, and it worked out very well. So, thank you.
My guide. Thank you. And that will lead us into voting on the slate of the new board members for fiscal year 2022-2023. If you take a look at the inside cover, that's the slate. I'll read through it real quick. Our new president, Orit Ackerman. Woo woo. Immediate. I'm very excited. Immediate past presidents will be myself and Neil. VP VP of Avodah Work, Tessa Silver. VP of Avodah Worship, Eric Pasternak. VP of Finance, Leonard Oppenheimer. VP of Gemilut Chasadim, Kevin Broder. And VP of Torah Education is Carol Altshore. Rest of the trustees, Joel Goldsmith, Lisa Hoff, Miriam Kraus, Elizabeth Lamon, Bernie Miller, Susie Minsberg, Leslie Morris, Tamara Resnick, Amy Rogovin, and Lisa Walker. Presidential appointee is Riv Ellen Prell, and honorary lifetime members, the 2 very lucky people, Eric Pasternak and Bob Perry, who are both here tonight. So I'd just like to give them a big hand for honorary lifetime members. And the way we vote, I believe you have to be in person, right? To vote for a slate, you have to be here, right? Yes. Anyone who's watching at home and registered was emailed ballots. Okay. So what I'm hearing is anybody that was at home and registered for live stream was emailed a ballot. So you would have voted already, I assume. Thank you. And then for those that are here, you vote on the full slate or no slate. And we can just do it by hand. So those in favor of the Board of Trustees slate for 2022-2023, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. And abstentions? Thank you. It passes unanimously in here anyway. All right, so I'm looking forward to a new year. And with that, I get to exit stage left. And upcoming is Orit Ackerman gets to enter stage right. No. All right, come on up. Yeah. Closing remarks from Orit. Thank you.
Sometimes I'm going to make Libby come up and do this because she's better than I am sometimes at this. I didn't have anything prepared for tonight. I came straight from a work event, so I figured I'm just going to steal what my boss said at that event. He said, "There are people who are placed into leadership, there are people who seek leadership, and there are leaders. So thank you for putting me into this position, and I'm willing to admit that I do want to be here. And I will do my best to be a leader. Thank you for all of the guidance that I have and will receive from past and current leaders, both on the board and off. Thank you for being here tonight and for watching at home. And let's go eat some cake."
I'll just do it up here. That concludes our annual meeting for tonight. I believe dessert in the social hall. Thank you all for attending in person and on live stream. Appreciate it. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.